in and board management. But I've certainly worked at a lot of smaller organizations. So, I had specialties, but I also had to wear a lot of hats. Sometimes it was membership management, event management. I like to call it amateur IT. Sometimes you've got to just solve some problems. And I am really excited today to get to talk to you a little bit more about Catchafire, whether you have it right now, or if you are going to put your name in the hat so that you could yourself get a free membership through the Michigan Health Endowment Fund. Some fun facts: I also am a Catchafire volunteer. So things I'm showing you today, there is also a chance if you post a project that you could find me and maybe we will work together. Could be fun. And with that, I'll just go right into our agenda so you know what to expect of the day. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what exactly Catchafire is. And then from there, I'm going to go over how to prioritize your projects. And this is helpful for you regardless of if you have Catchafire membership or not. This is a really great method for you to break down these bigger tasks that you might have. After that, I'm going to show you some projects from your peers from other Michigan nonprofits that are using Catchafire. And then we're going to take some time for questions and answer and finally wrap up. And that's where I'll give some tips on making the most of this conference to help kick it off and just give you some final thoughts. Now, as we mentioned, you can feel free to write your questions in that Q&A tab, and I promise you there are no bad questions. I am a big fan of them, and it makes things much more fun, although if you can't tell, I'm very excited about this. So a little bit about Catchafire itself. Catchafire is a platform that connects nonprofits that have operational needs. Let's say you need to have a document translated, or you need your accounting system set up. With professionals who are hoping to donate their skills and knowledge. Something you might not know is that there are millions of volunteers all around the world who are hoping to give back to their communities and get involved with causes that they care about. And many of these folks would like to use their expertise and the skills they've developed in their careers to make lasting impact. And here at Catchafire, we've spent the last 11 years developing the strongest and most reliable skills-based volunteering experience possible for both the volunteers and the nonprofits. We don't focus on programmatic volunteering, just to be clear. So you won't find a volunteer that will speak at your next event, or maybe will give out food at your local food pantry. However, you will find volunteers that are going to make short-term lasting impact capacity building projects. To get a little bit more into that, a lot of times when we think about how to use the site, we get it too complicated. So I'm going to simplify here. Essentially what happens is you'll post a project. Maybe you want someone to write your next individual donor letter, or perhaps you want someone to customize a Salesforce report for you. From there, you'll start getting applications from professional volunteers. And then from there, you will find and pick the right volunteer for you and your organization. Now, typically when I talk about Catchafire, this is about the time where I get questions about where we find these people who are willing to work for our organizations for free. Who are these mythical creatures, these magical beings? And what we do here as an organization is we partner with companies like Patagonia, MassMutual, Crunchyroll, and we build out their corporate skills-based volunteering programs for them. So that means that employees go through their employers to volunteer for causes that they care about and get involved with organizations that they're interested in. Another really large source of volunteers for us is through our partnership with LinkedIn. And that one is huge because everything that you can do on our site is scoped out to be completed virtually or remote by default. So that means that when you post a project, it gets sent out to our general community. It gets distributed to our corporate skills-based volunteering program. And then it is also sent and posted on LinkedIn's volunteer marketplace. So you could match with someone in Grand Rapids, Traverse City, maybe you find another Youper, could be out of state, could be anywhere. It depends. The point here is that you can find the right volunteer for your organization and not just someone who is simply nearby. Now, there are a lot of other resources aside from these volunteer projects that you can also take advantage of. And these you can access regardless of membership. So for example, we host topical webinars more or less every month, and we focus on topics that are pressing in our community or that we've heard a great need by different members, different nonprofits. For example, we are hosting a suite of fundraising webinars over the next 3 months. And in the past, we've hosted webinars on creating new websites, managing graphic design volunteers, even done strategic planning. And we have both on-demand and upcoming webinars. And you can access that by going to catchafire.org/webinars or just logging in if you have an account. Another resource that I find really valuable is our resources and tools page. I show a screenshot on the right of it. Catchafire staff have taken some time out and created a list of different resources and tools that we personally either use or have used and really love, because we want to make it a little bit easier for you to choose tools that work for you and be a little bit less inundated with all of these different options if you don't want to have to deal with that. I think it's really great. We do note if something's free, if there's a nonprofit discount, and we also mention if it is HIPAA compliant or if it is accessible for people who are deaf or hard of hearing or are blind or visually impaired. And you could get, you're going to see a theme. You can find this at catchafire.org/nonprofit resources. And I will be giving you a deck. I have a copy of it for you all, and it has clickable links, so you don't need to memorize anything I'm telling you, I promise. But going a little bit further in now that I've given you just a really quick overview of what Catchafire does, I want to talk more about what it can do for you and ways that, you know, sometimes we're so busy that it can be really challenging to do anything that could make you less busy because it feels like it's just another thing you have to do and more work. And I want you to come away today thinking about an action that you can take that will make your life even 1% easier because it will take a little bit of stress off of you. So hopefully we can get there. But the way we would do that, and the way I recommend it, is to start with your big picture. So think about your overarching needs. What is something that is most pressing for your organization right now? Or alternatively, what is most pressing for you in your professional life? Maybe there's a skill set that you really need in order to get to the next level, or maybe you just don't have time to translate a document or transcribe something. Like, think about where there may be gaps that could be filled. Then think about your checklist. Is there something that keeps making it to the checklist the next day because you haven't had that chance to cross it out? Or is there something that a board member asks you about every 3 months and then you kind of skirt around the topic to try and avoid it? I may be speaking from personal experience. It happens to the best of us. Maybe that's a thing you want to pursue. Or perhaps you want to think about it from a different point of view completely. If money wasn't an issue, if resources weren't something you had to consider, what would your organization want to work on? What would you do to strengthen your organization? Once you've thought through these prompts, you can start identifying some themes. Maybe, for example, you realize that your dream is to start a podcast, or maybe you want to expand your programming to a new area, but money or resources are an issue right now. Or perhaps you want to elevate your personal fundraising and you want to be coached on how to better do that. Those are bigger goals that you can accomplish. Maybe you want to run a campaign for Giving Tuesday, for example. Now, once you've come up with that bigger idea or these things that could be taken off of your list, if you could break it down, you're going to actually break it down into smaller steps here. So the way you start taking action on things that can feel extremely overwhelming when you're possibly stretched too thin, you're doing too much, but that's kind of the way it is, unfortunately, sometimes, or maybe there's just a lot going on in life. It will be a lot easier if you can break them down into the smallest step possible. So think about what the sequence is for accomplishing this goal. If we were going to say, let's make a campaign, for example, I have one here. The goals would be around making goals and your metrics for success. You have to plan the timing, make your calendar. You get to create the collateral, the materials you're going to share. Setting up your platforms. Maybe you don't have Instagram set up. That might be something you need to focus on. Updating your website. Breaking it down into these smaller pieces can make it a lot more tangible than trying to think about these big projects that just feel like you can't really broach them or approach them right now. If you aren't sure what the steps are, that's okay too. You don't need to know everything. That's That's not why you are running a nonprofit or why you are doing the important work you're doing. You can speak to professionals on the phone. We have these things called Ask an Expert calls or 1-hour phone calls. And you can ask them what they think the steps would be for you to accomplish your bigger goal, or what you need to know in order to get started. And I find them great because it's just a full hour of free consultation. I can think of quite a few times where Google didn't answer my questions, but I didn't have a consultant I could go to. This is pre-Catchafire. And it would have been really nice if I could have just spoken to a human resources professional, because that's not my expertise. Or maybe I wanted help with our 990. It would have been great to speak to a finance professional. Now, I've kind of gone through this a little quickly, mainly because if you want more information on Catchafire, how to use it, some more in-depth details on these best practices to post projects or to get support from skills-based volunteers, I really encourage you to go to our webinars. We have a weekly introductory webinar where you'll see me again, actually, and my colleague Hidra, who is on the line. And what will happen is I'll walk you through step by step how to get started, how to identify what you need help with, and then where to go from there. And we really walk through the entire process from thinking about a project all the way to choosing your volunteers and starting your project itself. And I do want to mention before I go into this, my colleague Hidra Hamid is on the line, and they're fantastic. And they are our newest addition to the nonprofit advisory team. So I really wanted to introduce Hidra to a community that really understands the nonprofit world, and in my opinion, represents the diversity in terms of missions and in terms of the representation of staff. And to me, Michigan, the entire state, but especially the UP, really represents that. And I'm saying that now because I'm about to show you only examples from Michigan organizations that have been funded through either Michigan Health Endowment Fund or through the Washtenaw Coordinated Funders Coalition. So I really wanted to start with my favorite, which I had to show off to both Karen and Wolfie. This is a logo that was designed for United Way of Marquette County, and it's Ubers United. And I just thought this was so cool, but also just felt so apt for presenting. And it just seemed like, what a great way to kick off showing you so many different beautiful examples of organizations that have been using Catchafire and taking advantage of it. The next one I want to show you is going to be food gatherers. Now, food gatherers is kind of like a case study because they have done a whole suite of projects. So they went from identifying a big need and then breaking it down into smaller steps. So what I mean by that, I'll actually show you full details here. If we scroll down, you'll see they've saved $109,000 already. If we go to projects, we can see that they've started with a lot of communications, strategic pieces here. But even in this first page, their most recent projects, they're really focused on piecemeal getting different parts of their work stream completed, an audit for their website, copy editing, print materials that are being designed. And if I went back, you would see that they actually had someone design their branding guidelines for them, which is essentially how you can use the logo, keeping it consistent across all kinds of design materials that you have created. And as you see, I'll just go through a couple pages, just so you can see the type of work that our volunteers are really driven to do, because something I love about the volunteers on our site is that they are indeed mission driven. They're looking to give back in a way that they aren't always able to in their career, or perhaps they're retired, or they are still building out their experience. And this has been where they've been focusing all of their work, or maybe they're unemployed right now. It's a really special community of people that really care, and they put their hearts into these types of projects. And I just love that they even go through the messaging so that this is a really thorough set of branding guidelines here. Now, something that food gatherers had said is they started with this brand guidelines project, and it was then the impetus for all of their following communications related projects. So for example, they had someone design this food distribution flyer for them and make it a template so that they could use it in other languages to support their full constituency. And they did a bunch of different translation projects to have each document in 5 different languages here. And I just thought I'd show you 2 examples here. I could have gone through all 5, but I want to make sure we have time here. Here's another. And they also did a communications materials audit. They looked through exactly how they present themselves to their audience and what they should change or what might be more consistent for them and be more effective and be received better by their audiences so that they could make sure that their services are being used by those that deserve it and get support from donors that are interested in this kind of important work. Now, to get a little bit more in detail, in case looking at all of those documents might be a little bit tricky, let's look at it from kind of the point of view that we used in the exercise before. So the big idea, right, it was to create consistent and recognizable communications that can reach more people here. So they broke it down into smaller steps. So the sequence, this is only a couple because they've done 25 calls and projects. I'm not going to list every single one, but they started with that visual brand guide. Then they had someone audit their communications, and they were really looking at it through a DEI lens so that they could be more inclusive and have a standard of what they will be presenting and how they will be representing the people that they serve. After that, they started creating more consistent communications from those 2 pieces that volunteers worked on for them. They had someone make deck templates for presentations, for meetings that they have with stakeholders, with funders. They had people design flyers, the flyers I showed you, those documents that were translated, they did it in 5 different languages. After that, they had someone set up an Excel dashboard for them so that they could really understand where they needed to focus their fundraising efforts. And the reason I put this under this bigger goal of communications is because one of the most important things, of course, is knowing your audience. And they were really thinking so holistically about this bigger goal and all of the different pieces that could really benefit them, and took advantage of the fact that there are these volunteers that are able and willing to work on this with them. From there, they started having people redesign their annual report. So it could be a 1-pager. And they wanted that for grant makers and for new stakeholders that they were meeting and for other donors, that they just had a simple 1-page instead of giving them a multi-page booklet. And then after that, they also had people design their stationery templates for them, for their acknowledgement letters specifically. Now, right now, they're actually working on their website, I believe, and they've been having people audit it so they can make sure that the people they're serving and the communities that they're trying to communicate with can really have a great experience on the site, and that the site itself really represents their mission in an inclusive way. And I'm excited for whatever that is done. Maybe next time I get to speak to you all one day, I'll be able to show that off to you as well. But I show this to say that this is possible for you and your organization as well. If there is some goal that if you had all of the resources in the world, you could accomplish it. This is a way that you can actually accomplish this, because at the end of the day, all organizations are expected to have just these infinite resources, the same as these multi-million-dollar organizations, to accomplish their dreams and do their programming and get their work out everywhere and get word to different audiences. But that is not always the reality. I mean, I can honestly say from my experience, that's not been my reality at any organization I've worked at. You might be different, and that's okay, but this is still a way for you to bridge those gaps. Maybe you just need someone that can support you, or you don't have that professional skill set on your staff, or maybe you just don't have the time right now or the funding to pay professionals to be doing this for you. You can use Catchafire to accomplish these bigger goals that may have just been a goal or a distant dream of yours that you thought maybe with a strategic plan we could think about getting there in 5 years. You can make it more attainable and in a quicker manner this way. Now, I have some other examples I'd really love to show you. And again, if you have questions about anything I'm showing you, or if you are one of the organizations I'm featuring, I would love to hear from you if you want to write that in the chat or in the Q&A. But I thought I would show you some other organizations just so you can get a really good overview of just honestly a handful of some of the organizations I found from a quick overview, and that my colleague Hidra also helped me look through. And I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention Grow and Lead, which is I feel like no surprise, an organization that I love working with. And they have done quite a few projects. They've done 11 so far, and they've saved almost 25K. And the project that I wanted to show off is something that maybe it's a personal bias here, but it's something I never really loved doing. And when I said like amateur IT, this often fell under it. They had someone design their Excellence in Education Awards, their pamphlet. So this is something that I would get assigned somehow in past roles. I'd either have to figure out how to use InDesign, or I was trying to figure out how to edit PDFs without having software. And I'd be spending hours on YouTube trying to figure out some tricks. And it just makes me so happy to see organizations actually get the support that they deserve, and to get something that is as beautiful as the work they're doing. And I just can't say enough words about just how clean this is. It just looks professional. And I'm sure that both Karen and Wolfie would probably corroborate that they are glad they did not have to do this themselves. I won't 100% speak for them, but I did see some great reviews from them in this project. And this is something, again, maybe this is part of your workload that is your least favorite thing to do. It doesn't have to be that it is extremely difficult or that it is overburdening you. It could be a small thing that you just don't enjoy doing particularly. That could be a great way for you to get started through Catchafire. I know some organizations that they have they have people that will copyright some of their social media posts for them, or they'll have someone that will write their donor letters so that they don't have to go through with that themselves. And it's not because they can't do it or that they don't have the money or something like that. It's just that it would be easier to outsource it so that they could focus on other parts of their work. Next example, I did want to show a phone call because we do have these 1 hour consultative calls, and maybe I'm showing you projects and eventually you want to work on them, but maybe it feels like it's too much right now. And that happens, right? Sometimes we're just doing too much for it here. Always helps. Okay, so this is Central Michigan University, and they had posted an organizational strategy call. And this example, I just thought was perfect. I just stumbled upon it by just a coincidence, but they were looking to have someone talk them through the process of strategic planning, creating their strategic plan and using a Gantt chart in this case. And I feel like sometimes it can feel just daunting to even think through those steps, right? I've mentioned that. This is one way that you could learn what those steps are and figure out if this is something you're prepared to work on, what those smaller pieces would be so you can determine your projects. And I really appreciate that, that they were thinking through a different way that they could be doing a strategic plan and thinking creatively. And they worked with this volunteer, and I believe there is a review from the nonprofit here. Yes, so Myra is saying that the volunteer gave them a more generic tool just so that they could like get started with this work a little bit quicker and then eventually advance into this more difficult piece. So starting with something that's approachable and then eventually getting to that point of that final goal, right? I just really appreciate getting to see good news. So I thought I'd share a little bit with you today. Stepping away even further, I wanted to talk a little bit about developing yourself. Not everything has to be explicitly for your organization that you use Catchafire for. Because at the end of the day, strengthening yourself as a professional does benefit your organization and it will help you further your mission. And it can sometimes be hard to get that funded or to have the resources to get the mentorship or the coaching or trainings that you deserve. And in this case, United Way of Marquette County, they did a time management coaching project. And this is one of my favorite ones to recommend, especially if you feel like picking a project feels like too much because you don't even have time to manage a volunteer. This could be a really great place to start. Maybe you feel like time is out of your control. You have no say in your calendar, or it just feels like your day just like whirls by. This is something that you should consider. I can honestly say I work on time management. It's something I've been trying to change in my life, and it can really help you feel a little bit more stable and like you can be more productive and a little bit calmer. And United Way of Marquette County, they wanted to really focus on what is most important and how this will help the community. So I really like that they were bringing it back to the mission, but at the end of the day, this also does genuinely benefit them as an individual. Now, we have quite a few different types of professional development projects. I just picked one example, but we have so many. There's meeting facilitation coaching, which I highly recommend, especially if you are maybe not a big fan of your staff meetings or your board meetings, and you feel like if you had the tools or the information, you could have it be more efficient, or you could be running them quicker, or you just want to have that as a skill for your programming. Maybe you host different sessions with your beneficiaries, and if you could facilitate in a more effective way, or maybe you just want to learn some best practices, that could be a really great thing for you to work on. Some other examples, we do have technical skills that you can be trained on, for example, Excel training, or maybe you want someone to teach you how to update your own website, because right now you have one person that knows how to use WordPress or Wix or Squarespace, whatever you have, and if they're out sick that day and something needs to change urgently, you don't quite have the ability to fix that. I'm a big fan of these professional development projects because I feel like they set you up for success for yourself immediately, and then for your organization in the long term. So if you have younger staff especially, or maybe you are an executive director or you're higher up, you have been in this career for a little bit of time, you could do management skills coaching or leadership coaching. I know nonprofits that have made lasting relationships with volunteers through these coaching and training projects, and they have a mentor to this day, or they have someone that they can regularly talk to. Sometimes they become board members, which I find amazing, or they become a regular volunteer, or they become a donor even. And it's because everything in the world, and especially nonprofits, is relationship building. And if someone is this determined to help you succeed, it is likely that you can create something where it is not just you have a project and then you never hear from them again. And I will say, if that does happen to you, please let me know. I would love to hear if you get a board member or a donor, or you now have a best friend through Catchafire, because people just will casually tell me that on the phone after I've spoken to them for a year. And I would love to have known about it before because it's so exciting. I would have sent something like a letter to the volunteer. But I think that it is just a great way to represent the way our community is connected. I really love the Catchafire community because it feels like everyone is here to support each other, and the volunteers here are doing this because of how much they care. And it is just so abundantly clear to me that they are so deeply passionate just based upon what they work on. I've had volunteers that create resources for their nonprofits so that they can maintain whatever the volunteer works on. I've even seen, I've worked with volunteers that have worked on webinars with me so that we can present to our nonprofits, or they've come to me with a suggestion on something I should be working on because they've had a lot of questions about it. That is not passion that I could fake for you. That is just part of the amazing work that these people do. It's just remarkable to me. Speaking of remarkable, I think working on your mission is a very commendable effort. I think that missions are really challenging because you want them to be broad enough that you have some freedom with how you accomplish your goal, but you don't want that to be a very long lingering sentence, and you don't want it to be so vague that it's unclear what you do as an organization. So it's just such a balancing act. And especially when you're so deep in the work, it can be really challenging to go about reworking your mission, or maybe thinking about if your vision, values, and mission are all aligning. And Carol worked with Wonderful Productions to completely rewrite their mission. And I actually have a screenshot of their new mission. But I just really appreciate that this is something that the staff and the board came together and agreed really describes their organization. So they set the stage for community-built art experiences, and then they explain it below. So it's a nice and clear sentence, and then they kind of break it out like a how we do it type of a section. And I've definitely sat in a lot of meetings where we struggled to come up with the mission statement, and it's not because people aren't skilled at it, it is because it is just that challenging. And if it was easy, we would all have millions and millions of dollars, right? Because then we would have just airtight elevator pitches from the moment we've created an organization. And that sometimes is the case, but it isn't always. And I do think it's a nice reminder that your mission doesn't have to stay the same from when you've created it. It is okay and it is good to consider if this is still in line with the vision that was originally there and if that matches the vision for the future. Because an organization is always growing. It's not what it was when it was founded, right? The goal is that it won't be the same as when you founded an organization or when your founder did create it. It's that it grows into this beautiful organization of its own being that can work towards these priorities, these values, these goals in whatever way kind of the world directs them. Now, I am going to show one final example, and then I think I will bring Karen back on after that. But I wanted to give you kind of a variety of different kinds of projects, just so that you could see all of the different things that you could get support with. This is not all of them. We actually have 147 projects. So unfortunately, I can't represent all 147 right this moment, but I thought this might give you a good overview here. And Midland County Cancer Society, they needed someone to create a whole suite of thank you letters or acknowledgement letters for them. And they were specifically around tributes and honorary gifts. And so they wanted it both for the person who made the donation and then whoever it was in honor or in memory of. And I picked one of them because I thought one is better than me trying to show you all four in a short presentation here. But this is what the volunteer created for them, a whole template so that they can just plug in the information they need to let the person know that a gift was made in honor of them, and just give them best practices, but also some really nice language that is a story that doesn't feel exploitative about the people that are being served, but also gives this person a good idea of why this organization is so important. It's a very tight balance, but this volunteer I thought really handled it well. And again, maybe this is something that you've been meaning to update, but it just hasn't been top priority, or it's something that you sit down and then you feel like you have the energy to do probably anything else in the world, or maybe you'd love to do, you just don't have the time. Whatever it is, this is something I would take advantage of. It's great to have an outsider tell you why they think your organization is compelling, because that is going to help you with understanding how you are promoting your organization and presenting yourself. But it can also give you a new perspective on ways that you can be developing a case for support or your elevator pitch. So I do always recommend that you hear from an outside perspective what's compelling about your organization. It's a great kind of temperature check. Now, I want to pause. I'm kind of impressed at my level of time management here. So I guess the coaching is working. Here we are. But I would love to bring Karen back on to moderate if we have any questions. But if we don't, that's also okay. I am trying to look, but my Zoom is doing something a little bit funny here. Doesn't look, I don't think I see questions. I could be wrong, Karen. I'm sorry, Wolfie. I don't know why I've never called you Karen in the time I've known you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
I do not see anything in the Q&A. This is the time, people. You got some questions. I will tell you that I was very fortunate on the timing that we got Catchafire. We were introduced to it on the Thursday and Friday before the world shut down in March of 2020. And Jay and Tyler were scrambling to figure out if they were going to get from Houghton to New York City again. And it was just wild. And that was on a Friday. And on Sunday, Amy informed us that the office was closed down. And we already had all these scholarship recipients to honor, and found out we weren't going to be able to do that in person. And Tyler, one of Jay's associates, had said, if you don't do something with Catchafire right away, like in the first 3 days, I think, you're not going to. So there I was at home with my laptop thinking the world was never going to be the same. And that was true. But it was like, well, let's see what we can do with Catchafire, and found this wonderful volunteer who also was not working, and she found Catchafire and wanted to do something. Oh, here we got some questions. And she did the book for us 2 years in a row. It was wonderful. Okay, will there be any information about this available at the nonprofit conference itself this week? Not directly. There is going to be that membership as a door prize, and some lucky person or organization is going to get that. And but I will be happy to answer questions for people from personal experience. I know there are some other people attending who have used Catchafire. So if you, Michael, if you want to keep in touch with me, or Victoria has done some projects too. And oh yeah, Megan Murphy from the Michigan Health Endowment Fund would be a really good person to go to. And then Lynn Hill from the Superior Health Foundation said that she appreciates Catchafire so much. She has utilized this resource and it has been a fantastic experience, and very grateful. And then we have an anonymous attendee asking, do I have to subscribe to participate and work with a volunteer?
Great question. So in order to post a project and work with a volunteer, you do indeed need an active membership. Typically, people get memberships through grant makers like Megan Murphy at the Michigan Health Endowment Fund. If you're unsure if you have access to that, you can always contact us. I would say there are times where people didn't realize they even had access to us because maybe they got an email and it just seemed too good to be true, so they just assumed it was spam, which is a real story of a couple of different organizations I've spoken to. But I'm really excited because one attendee will be getting a free membership. So if you don't have it, after the conference, they'll be reaching out to you if you have one. And if you don't, you can also speak to your grant makers. Let them know that this is something you really want, because we do partner with them quite a bit. And finally, I will say we do have organizations that do pay memberships, but I'm of course always going to encourage you to try and get a foundation to cover that cost for you as an organization. Just the fundraiser and we can't help it, but it is possible. If you have any questions, easiest way to reach us is help@catchafire.org, and I'll write that in the chat. But thank you so much for that question. I really do appreciate it. I apologize if I wasn't clear enough earlier.
Jay, are there any other organizations other than the Michigan Health Endowment Fund that, I don't know, do you call it sponsor, or, you know, because they've been so generous in helping so many organizations in the UP. Mm-hmm. Are there others in the UP?
As far as I know, we don't have any active other partners in the UP. We do have some generally in Michigan, and I know we're looking to expand that, which is kind of why I am encouraging you to speak to your grant makers, because it is possible that we've already been speaking to them. And if they hear that there's a demand, that might help the case that they could then cover the cost. Or maybe it will put them on the radar. Maybe they didn't even realize this is something that they could be funding for their grantees. I will say we do have other funders, but they are in Washtenaw and Ann Arbor, as far as I know.
Thank you.
I did also want to say the story about seeing you, it really does hit home, and I think it's why I'm so excited to be here. You were the last person I think I saw, aside from, you know, plane staff, for a good 6 or 7 months. And it's such a beautiful trip. I've never been to Michigan, and I've really loved the UP. And I do remember saying to Tyler, like, there are worse places we could be stuck, because it was so picturesque and snowing and beautiful. So it is a real pleasure. I know I am not a Michigander and I'm not a Uper, but I do have a lot of love for where you all come from.
we would have shown you a good time if you had gotten stuck. You'd still be here. Okay. We have another question. How often can we use it if we subscribe?
Here's where the greatest news comes. If you have a membership and it's active, you can post as many projects as you want for as long as you have that membership. I have a recommendation, or as I sometimes like to say, a recommendation, that if you are just starting out using the site, it might make most sense for you to start with 2 or 3 projects or calls, just so you get a sense of how much time it will take you to manage it. But we don't put a limit on it because we trust that you'll know what your limits are and what your schedule is like way more than we could ever know. We really believe in trusting nonprofits, and this is a great way to start, is just by letting them do what they need to do with a resource they're given.
One thing I wanted to add too is the site is sometimes, you know, when you're looking at something new like this, you're not sure, like, I'm not even sure what to even look for, what to ask for. And Catchafire, the site is set up really well with some projects that are like already there and in different topics, and you can get a feel for some of the things that you could ask for help with.
Getting pro tips today. This is a special session here. I put a link in case people want to look at the menu itself. Maybe you don't want to look at the whole deck that I've created. I will not take that personally, but you can see the different projects that Karen's mentioning and the different like templates there are for you to get something done. And what better way to kind of start thinking about what you might want help with than to just physically see it, you know?
Well,
I think I've hit all the questions, yeah?
yes,
I don't think
we're good
how
on it, and
proud I am of my time management here. I'm feeling pretty good. This is
it was, yeah, it was a good refresher on some things too. And I know I've got to get back to some of my projects and contact some people.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jay Jean.
of course.
We really
I
appreciate
actually
you.
have a little bit more to show, if that's okay.
Okay, great.
Got endless enthusiasm here, so sorry. Let me know if you gotta like pull the cane and stop me here. But I would love to show you just some tips on taking advantage of this amazing conference that's being led by Grow and Lead, because I thought, what better way for you to kick off this conference, regardless of if you have Catchafire or not, if you win this free membership or not, you can come away with some tangible action items, things that you can be thinking about both for yourself professionally and your organization. And by the way, if you have any questions, again, you can reach out, help@catchafire.org. If you have questions specifically about this presentation, my email is literally just my first name, Jay, J-A-Y, @catchafire.org. If you want to follow up with me. So just kind of wrapping this up. There are obviously thousands of articles about how to take advantage of conferences, but I haven't seen many about these not posts, we're still with COVID, but these times where we're still trying to social distance quite a bit. There's a lot of changes. This isn't like before COVID and before the pandemic anymore. And I think that this may be for the better in a couple of ways, but what you can be doing between now and the day of the conference, before you get to that keynote speaker, just consider your mindset. How are you arriving to this conference? Are you able to be fully present, or do you feel like you're going to be stuck to your phone because you're worried about answering emails? If you can put on an away message so that you can just be away from your phone and be fully unplugged, that might be your best bet. Obviously, that depends on what kind of work you do at your organization, but this is something that will benefit your entire organization if you can really be there and be present and mindful of what you're learning. Then from there, you want to think about what your goals are. What are you looking to get out of this conference? Maybe you're hoping to just network with people, or maybe you have a specific type of goal. Maybe you want to learn a little bit more about like fundraising, or you want to hear of some current data to really get an idea of where we are as a sector. Having that as your idea going in will be a lot easier for you as you're moving through this conference and trying to make the most of it. After that, you want to just look at the agenda before you get there. The reason isn't just so you know what sessions there are, it's that you also understand when there are breaks. And you know when there's going to be meals, that you can be thinking about when you're going to be networking. If you need some time to decompress, maybe this is a lot of people for you. I mean, a lot of us haven't seen many folks in quite a while. It's helpful for you to kind of feel prepared in advance, like you can really know what you're doing on the day of, and it doesn't feel like you have to run around. I'm trying to keep you from feeling inundated ever, and we're going to start with this conference here, hopefully. Then from there, once you've kind of thought through these sessions, what you want to get out of it, that's your time to start really looking at your communication and your learning styles. So in terms of communication, I'm thinking more in terms of the way you network with people, the way you connect with them. Maybe you are more introverted, so you do need to take advantage of those breaks. Or maybe you are very extroverted and you need to think through different ways to communicate your excitement that won't feel like you are just a ball of energy that may be a little much for people. Who knows? Maybe I'm speaking from experience with the second one a little bit there. But it's really helpful for you to think that through, or maybe the way you learn is auditory. So you need to be able to process through hearing it, or perhaps you're the type that needs to take notes. Then you want to prepare by having something you can take notes with, either a notebook, maybe a notepad, maybe you use your phone somehow. It's going to be kind of like what you would do if you were in school. If you knew what you know now, going back to school, how would you probably help yourself learn? And there's no wrong way to do that, as long as you're being considerate of other people, of course. You're not just like putting a camera on flash and recording people without their consent or something. And then from there, you want to think about the networking aspect a little bit deeper. So now you've thought about your own communication style and how you might tailor that to other people to make yourself feel like you can really put your best foot forward in terms of networking. But then you want to think about how you're sharing your contact information. How are you going to receive it? And I mean this in a couple of ways. I mean it literally in the physical sense that maybe you don't feel comfortable exchanging business cards because of COVID-19, or maybe you just generally don't ever follow up if something is physically in your hand, like a piece of paper. I know personally, I am not allowed to have paper in my house because I will instantly become disorganized. And so I always have to take photos of a business card the moment I get it, so that I can easily follow up later. But maybe you're the type that wants to use an app to process it, or you want to take a note on your business cards that you received so that you know how you met them, or what was the topic of conversation, or maybe something that really stuck out to you about this person so you can jog your memory later. And then in terms of sharing, maybe you want to just have an easy way to share just your email address, or you want to connect immediately on LinkedIn so that you don't have to do any of this paper process. Or maybe you want to pull out some really fancy business cards. You know, if we had spoken further in advance, I would have said you could have Catchafire design some business cards, but perhaps for next year's conference. But these are things that sometimes can feel overlooked, or maybe they're things you've been thinking about, but you haven't had time to fully just sit down and consider them without having to worry about 100 other things or 100 other fires that you need to put out. Some other tips for how you can leverage this conference. And obviously this is not every exhaustive tip ever. These are just kind of what I've learned over the last few years of being a fundraiser and someone that's been on a board, and also just seeing other people that have kind of been my goal or my mentor and how they manage these types of conferences, because it's so worth it to go here. You might as well really leverage it. Having an elevator pitch prepared is something that will really help you. It doesn't have to be a super formal elevator pitch with an ask, but having a concise way to describe your mission and what you do will be endlessly helpful, not just for this conference, but forever. If a family member is asking what you do, or maybe you are meeting some new friends, this is going to just be the easiest way to have some blanket language that you can use very quickly. You could even think about ways to include them at the end of your elevator pitch instead of when you would make an ask or ask someone to donate money. You can ask a question about what's been a cool project they've been working on lately, or maybe you want to hear what's been most engaging about this conference so far, or what they're excited about. It doesn't have to be super formal. It also doesn't have to be just the normal small talk that some of us might feel subjected to. You can get a little bit creative, or you can think a little bit more about why you're all here, why you're here all together, which brings me to this next point of, if you feel nervous, or maybe you're feeling like you are coming off very awkward, I just want you to remember, most of us have been indoors for 18 months, or we've been working at our organizations and just serving our communities. And that's like the maximum interaction we've had with human beings for 18 months. So you are most likely not the only person that might feel that way or might feel uncomfortable, and that's okay. You'll know your own limits when you get there, but just give yourself a little bit of grace. No one is expecting you to be at the same level of social interaction as we were 18 months ago or 24 months ago even. So just try and have a little bit of patience with yourself if this is one of the first big interactions you're having with people. And then something that I sometimes do if I'm feeling nervous is I'll imagine that anyone I'm talking to feels the same way I do. And somehow that puts me at ease so that I can then make them comfortable. I'm sure there's something behind that, but I feel like it kind of makes me feel like we have a shared experience then, and then I'm not so worried about how I'm coming off so much as making sure that this person feels connected to me. And finally, you want to follow up. Making the most of this conference, it's not just you being there for the day of it. It's what you do afterwards with the information, the people, the tools and knowledge that you've been given. Follow up with the people that you met. Maybe you are going to work on a project with them, or you just want to sit down and maybe you want to talk about funders that you have in common. And if you can get in on some kind of a conversation with them together as a community, or perhaps you just have a new friend. That is great too. The other side of follow-up is sharing the information you've learned with your team. Maybe there's some big takeaways that you now want to impart on your organization, or you had an epiphany because of something you learned. This is your time to let people know what you got out of that conference, so that if they couldn't attend, they can really get a sense for what your mindset is now, or how you've grown just from this conference alone. And if you all went, this is a great time for you to kind of debrief, like what were the highlights, what do you think you're going to take away from this, and then you have some action steps. Sometimes you realize, like, I want to work more on my elevator pitch, or maybe you want to focus on a topic that gets covered in this conference. It really depends, but that follow-up is crucial, and it doesn't have to be challenging. It can be as simple as a LinkedIn request or sending a quick email. You don't have to agonize over anything. When Wolfie and I met, we did send a lot of emails to each other, but it never felt like a chore, and it doesn't have to feel like a chore to network with people if you are selective instead of trying to go for a high quantity, especially. Now, just a quick wrap up. I wanted to give you a reminder here. You don't have to do everything on your own, and quite honestly, you can't. So I was mentioning that I've worn a lot of hats. I've worked at small organizations, even larger ones. It felt like I was on my own a lot of the time and had to do significantly more than I could have reasonably done. At some point, you have to admit that you can't do it all, and that is totally okay. You can get support that you deserve, and one way is through Catchafire, and I apologize, you have it beyond August, and if you win, it would be different. My apologies here, but you will have membership, and you can get support from people that really are invested in your success and are here to help you so you don't have to be alone. And to me, that is one of the most beautiful things about this community. You're not alone in the sense that you have volunteers and you have other organizations that are rooting for you and want you to do it well. So if you need some inspiration for where to start, I feel like I've shown you a lot of different options here. So I kind of wanted to bring you back down to 3 so that you have a small commitment, which would be an organizational strategy call. Maybe you want to talk about your direction as an organization. You could have your logo redesigned, or maybe you're having an event and you want to have a special event for that. And then a little bit more involved, that time management coaching. I couldn't help myself. I did want to make sure you all saw that. Just to let you know that if you feel too busy, first of all, you're not alone, but you can change that a little bit at least. If you have more questions, again, help at Catchafire is a very easy way to reach out to us. There's also a chat bubble on the bottom right-hand corner of every page of our website. And if you are not a member, first of all, you can still attend our webinars, look at our resources. but Michigan Health Endowment Fund will be sponsoring one free membership for a lucky organization here. And there will be follow-up after the conference. I want to just thank you all for being here. This is something I've been really excited about for the past month since Wolfie came to me and suggested that this be a session we do. Because this is one of the most memorable experiences I had was visiting Michigan, and it really cemented my experience as someone that works at Catchafire and also someone that volunteers on the platform. And I hope that me realizing that having Catchafire would have been fantastic. Pre-Catchafire, Jay would have been very jealous. I don't want you to have to feel that envy. I want you to get the support that you deserve, because your mission deserves to live on for as long as you want your organization to be doing the work it's doing. And I want you to be sustainable beyond 2021. I want you to be here for as long as you want to be here, and to really support the work and get the type of support you deserve, and not just something that is passable or is fine, or you had to stay up all night to create, because you deserve more than that. And I hope you know that leaving today. So thank you so much for an hour of your attention. And I don't know if Karen or Wolfie, you'd like to say any closing words, but thank you both so much for being incredible hosts and just one of my favorite organizations. I have to say, I don't have favorites, but you know, I possibly have at least favorite people that I like to talk to. Don't quote me there, but it is a real pleasure to get to work with you and get to serve organizations like, honestly, all of the UP has been a real pleasure for me.
You're an honorary Uper.
For sure.
All right, thank you so much.
Jay, I will be following up with you. Thank you for coming through for us today and getting us off to a roaring start this week. And Karen, I'll turn it over to you. Jay, will be in touch. Thank you.
Hey, thanks everybody for attending today. Thank you again, Jay, for your time. We can't wait to see you all on Thursday and wish you a great rest of the week.